Sliding down here.
No.
Yeah, it goes about 3 decks below us through this hatch here, down to the lower decks of the ship. So we are now in the forward rope hold. This is where they would store the ship's mooring lines, the ropes they would use to tie the Queen Mary off whenever she was in port. Now, there's been a lot of odd activity in this area over the years. Primarily, what we have here is what is believed to be a residual energy. An energy from a past event that is attached to this specific area on board the Queen Mary and seems to repeat over and over again. And what we get here primarily are sounds. We've had reports of the sound of a loud crash coming from the very bow of the ship. We have had crew members and guests on our tours report hearing this, along with the sounds of metal tearing, rivets popping, water rushing into the ship, and even the sounds of men screaming out for help from our lower cargo holds. We believe that this residual energy is from October 2nd, 1942. During World War II, the Queen Mary, serving as a troop ship, was off the coast of Northern Ireland. On board were 10,000 soldiers. She was just off the coast of Northern Ireland, making her way to Scotland, when one of her escort cruisers cut across her bow and did not clear in time. At approximately 2:12 in the afternoon, the bow of the Queen Mary struck the midsection of the HMS Curaçao and cut the smaller vessel in half. The smaller vessel sank in about 5 minutes. This was an accident that killed 338 of the 439 crew members on board the HMS Curaçao. Now, many parapsychologists believe that paranormal activity many times stems from sudden, horrible, violent, untimely deaths. And we have 338 concentrated right here in the forward compartments on board the Queen Mary. Now, in that collision, the Queen Mary did suffer some severe structural damage. Her bow caved in 11 feet. The damage extended below her waterline. Water did pour into the forward compartments. When the Queen Mary arrived in Scotland and they were able to go down there and assess the damage, they discovered not only had the Queen Mary taken on water, but it is rumored that they did find some of the bodies of the crewmen from the HMS Curaçao, the decks below us. So all of that activity seems to be tied to that accident from October 2nd, 1942. Any questions so far?
We're good?
We're good? Okay. Ready to continue?
You're very good at your job, Danny.
I love my job, that's why. So, in case that first taste of Dark Harbor wasn't enough, we're going to walk back through there.
Yay!
Oh, Eric, that ass. Been working out?
You're Dark Harbor.
Rats. Cocks.
No, I gotta work out because I'm going out to the afternoon.
That's good shit.
What's that?
I heard something move over in the corner. I think it's just unhinged.
It's not all
Yeah, no thanks. Occasionally we do get guests passing through this area of the ship telling us that they have heard children on the other side of this door, which would be perfectly all right, provided that the third-class nursery was still in use as a nursery. But guess what? Has not been used as a nursery since the ship's arrival here in Long Beach, December of 1967. Over 50 years since this room has been used as a nursery. But still, we do get these reports from guests telling us they have heard children laughing inside this room, sometimes crying. And according to the ship's log, there were 2 children who passed away on board the ship. We're gonna go this way. Chloe. In January of 2017, one of our former crew members boarded the onboard elevators right over here. She boarded them down on our deck, one deck below where we are now. When she stepped into the elevator, she said that there was no one there. But when the elevator doors closed, she looked in the reflection on the doors. She said that she saw a woman wearing a long white gown standing directly behind her. She turned around quickly. The elevator was empty. She turned back. This woman was gone in the reflection. That former crew member was the second crew member that we have lost because of an experience like that in one of our passenger elevators here. It's possible that she may have seen what we call the woman in white. A woman who's described as being very elegant, yet somewhat sad, roaming throughout the ship. She's been seen in the third-class main lounge, the first-class main lounge. We've had sightings of her in the lounge at Sir Winston's, the dining room of the Promenade Cafe, and there have also been sightings of her in some of our hotel rooms. So if any of you happen to be staying on board, have fun. We're going to continue up from here.
Scary cat ever.
Back in June of 2016, one of our security officers reported that when she entered this corridor at approximately 2:15 in the morning after shutting down our observation bar, she noticed a little girl standing in the middle of the hallway. She thought it was odd that at such an early hour of the morning there was a little girl unattended in the middle of our hotel corridor. As she started to approach the little girl to ask her if she was lost, she said that the little girl raised her arms as though she wanted to be picked up, and then simply disappeared. The apparition of a little girl has been reported throughout the Queen Mary, so often that she even has a name. We call her Jackie. And those who have reported seeing Jackie describe her as being approximately 6 to 8 years old with curly blonde hair, usually seen wearing a pinafore over a light-colored dress. Most of the time, though, Jackie is seen in our first-class swimming pool, which many claim to be the single most haunted location on board the Queen Mary. A little more on that later. This way.
Jackie and Sarah are two different.
That is correct. Yes. Now, as we approach the 82nd anniversary of the ship's maiden voyage next month, I'd like to point out to our guests that virtually every nook and cranny has a ghost story connected to it. And that does include some of our bathrooms. For example, just behind you, the ladies' room, A deck forward. We've had ladies tell us they have encountered what appears to be the ghost of one of our captains in there, perhaps a ship's officer. Now, you may be wondering why we have a male apparition showing up inside the ladies' room. And there is a simple explanation for this. They switched the restrooms here in Long Beach. The ladies' room was originally the men's room, and the men's room originally the ladies' room. As for who this could be, many people believe it could be the ghost of Senior Second Officer William Eric Stark, who passed away on board the Queen Mary in 1949 after accidentally drinking tetrachloride, dry cleaning fluid. How do you accidentally drink dry cleaning fluid? I know. It was stored in an old gin bottle. Yes, it had not been relabeled. Officer Stark took a drink of what he thought to be gin. Turned out it was tetrachloride. Next day he was in a coma. 3 days later, Officer Stark was dead. So, that's how you accidentally drink tetrachloride on board the Queen Mary. Beware the gin. This way.
I heard about that. I heard it was like, how do you
I don't even know.
drink that?
No, nothing today. But sometimes guests staying in this room over here have told us they have smelled cigar smoke inside the sitting room of this particular suite. And true, the room is today known as the Churchill Suite. That's because Sir Winston Churchill sailed on board the Queen Mary a total of 10 times, 3 of those crossings made during World War II, under very great secrecy. We even had a crew member working on board in our housekeeping department who said that she actually saw Winston Churchill's ghost inside this room. Coincidence? Cigar smoke, Winston Churchill's apparition, in the Churchill Suite, the one room that he always requested on board? Perhaps. But then perhaps not. This way. Be walking down 3 decks to go take a little peek at the first-class swimming pool. Careful on the stairs. I'll tell you why later. So this is probably the most asked about room on board the Queen Mary, the entrance to our first-class swimming pool. Now, why is it the most asked about room on board the ship? Well, many parapsychologists believe that located in the changing rooms of our first-class swimming pool, there is a vortex, said to be a whirlpool of electromagnetic energy that acts as a portal between our world and the next. Some psychic investigators have even claimed it has allowed anywhere from 300 to 600 spirits access to the Queen Mary. We've also had a number of reported sightings inside this room. Sightings of a woman in a white tennis skirt seen walking down the stairs at the forward end of the room down to the lower deck, where she disappears behind one of the pillars. We've had sightings of a woman in a 1930s style bathing suit appear at the edge of the swimming pool, dive into it and vanish. Wet footprints have been known to materialize alongside the swimming pool. In April of 2010, while guiding a tour through this room, a guest pointed out what appeared to be wet footprints leading from the swimming pool back into the changing rooms and into one stall in particular where they simply stopped. I should also point out that our swimming pool has been drained for over 26 years now. There's no water in it. But this is the room where Jackie tends to make her presence known, that spirit of a little girl I mentioned earlier on our tour. Now, when she does appear in the first-class swimming pool, it's usually behind one of the pillars, peeking out. We've also had reported sightings of her skipping, dancing, sometimes singing, laughing, crying inside the room. Now, because Jackie does tend to appear here in the first-class swimming pool, it has led a number of our guests to believe that she may have drowned here. But in all of our research, we have never discovered any record of anyone drowning on board the Queen Mary. So to this day, it is still referred to as a rumored drowning. We don't know the exact truth as to why Jackie is here with us on board the Queen Mary. Let's see, where do we go from here? Give you another little taste of the Queen Mary's cardiovascular workout. Back up the stairs.
From out, just being outside here.
Oh, yes. Yes. My very first experience on board the Queen Mary, I was taking a shortcut through that room when I heard what appeared to be the laughter of a little girl coming from the entrance to the changing rooms. I assumed that it was one of my fellow tour guides who was playing a joke on me, so I walked down there into the changing rooms. There was no one in there. I was by myself. So my very first experience on board the Queen Mary, I do believe, was hearing Jackie laugh in the swimming pool. Hopefully she wasn't laughing at me. Back in August of 2012, one of our many tour guides reported that when he entered this area of the ship from the hotel corridor on the starboard side, approaching the third-class main staircase, he saw what appeared to be a gentleman dressed entirely in black, walking up the last few steps of the staircase. He said that there was nothing out of the ordinary about this until that man reached the top of the stairs and suddenly vanished. The tour guide did mention this to one of his supervisors later that day. The supervisor informed him that he had seen a ghost, commonly known as the Man in Black, and explained that the third-class main staircase was where 2 of the Queen Mary's passengers had in fact lost their lives. It is the steepest passenger stairway on board the ship. There's also another problem with it. The stairs are located toward the bow, the forward end of the ship, which would be rising and then falling with every single wave on the North Atlantic, so it could be a little difficult to maneuver these stairs at times. It turns out that a number of the passengers on board the Queen Mary did lose their footing while walking up or down the stairs, fell down to the deck below, did not survive their injuries. It is generally believed that this Man in Black was one of those 2 passengers. There have been over 24 reported sightings of him on this section of the third-class main staircase here in Long Beach. And as for the tour guide who reported seeing him back in 2012, well, that tour guide still works on board, still does tours. And he tells his tours about his experience in the third person. But now that we know just how dangerous the third-class stairway is, let's walk up. Hand railings are recommended. Now, this particular story really takes place down in our engine room, but in the interest of conserving time, since I do have a visual aid here, I'll tell you this story in front of this, one of our watertight door hatches. 38 hydraulically controlled watertight door hatches were on board, located throughout the lower decks to create isolated compartments, primarily in the event of a hull breach and the ship were flooded with water. They could isolate the hull breach to just one compartment and hopefully prevent the ship from sinking. Once activated, these door hatches would slide closed with about 700 pounds of hydraulic pressure per square inch in anywhere from 40 seconds to 1 minute. On July 10, 1966, just after 3:50 in the morning, the Queen Mary was entering a dense fog and the captain issued the order to seal the watertight door hatches. At approximately 4 o'clock in the morning, they discovered the body of an 18-year-old crew member from one of our boiler rooms caught in watertight door hatch number 13 down in the engine room. Now, how he became caught there, no one really knows. Some people think he was playing a game, some people think he had stopped to pick up a wrench, some people think that he may have been murdered. The truth is that we don't know the truth. We may never fully understand the truth behind his accident. But what we do know is that a number of our guests and crew members over the years have reported seeing a figure fitting his description. Described as wearing dark blue oil-stained coveralls, he has a beard, wears a white cap. He's been seen in close proximity to watertight door hatch 13. We've also had reports of disembodied voices down in that area. We've had guests tell us that they have heard his screams in Shaft Alley. Definitely something you would not want to mess with on board the Queen Mary. Let's see. Well, that is going to conclude our little haunted encounters tour this evening. I do want to thank you very much for joining us here aboard the Queen Mary. If you enjoyed the tour, my name is Daniel. If you did not, it's Tiffany. And now I'll turn things over to TC while I get back to my normal duties.
Okay then.
We're going to see how long he's going to stay there.
Don't blink.
You're on the full lid.
Tiffany, you're done. You're done, Tiffany.
You didn't like it?
Daniel. Now, Daniel is one of our great tour guides here. So.